Mr. Alejandro with us. Maybe he present the Zuba projects in Paraguay and his experience, please.
Thank you, Jose. I'm going to share our presentation. So essentially Zuba is a company founded 8 years ago, in 2016, and its core focus is delivering progress in people's lives. That's our mission as a company. And we set about this mission by developing infrastructure or apartments that accommodates people's expectations, possibilities, but at the same time gives them the opportunity to progress, which is why we created a stair. You know, our logo is a stair of progress. And this company has a group which has 3 main verticals. The first vertical is vertical urbanization. So we develop buildings. We also create funds, investment funds. So REITs, we built the first multifamily REIT in Paraguay, which we did in collaboration with Itaú Bank, the largest bank in Latin America. And we also developed suburban communities. Zuba is the core company from which the whole group was born. Eleva is the fund manager company, and Arasu is the name of the suburban community developer. What we do is we create infrastructure, we create buildings, and we became the first company in the real estate space to become investment grade in Paraguay in 2024, when we achieved an A- as our credit rating. And we did this mainly to show the entire world, but also specifically to give investors the confidence when they are investing in real estate. Because many times investing in real estate is trying to predict the future of not only development, but also capacity of a company to deliver its future commitments. And by doing this, we've shown that our company has the financial strength, the commercial strength, and also the capabilities in terms of after sales and processes to be able to deliver all the projects that we have in our pipeline. We also certified with the processes with ISO 9001 and also became a great place to work, top contender. What we focus in is finding the right locations, creating optimized spaces, and providing yield by operating, by renting, by selling properties from investors. Now, Asunción is right now in a very favorable environment for investment, because not only is it one of the fastest growing economies, Paraguay, one of the fastest growing economies in Latin America, actually the fastest in 2025, projected to be one of the fastest in 2026. But at the same time, it's also the cheapest city to live in. So this makes it very attractive for investment because incomes are rising, investment is coming in, but we are still, in relative terms, extremely cheap comparable to other Latin American capitals. Now, throughout the years, the public markets, so the financial markets, have started to grow exponentially. And what that is allowing is it is allowing investors to find investment vehicles such as REITs and other investment vehicles to start getting exposure to the real estate market. But at the same time, it's allowing development companies through their customers to give larger opportunities for purchasing through loans that can be securitized, through other investment vehicles. And we are also the first real estate company to actually do securitization of credits, of mortgages. Now, the growth of the construction sector is one of the highest growing sectors in the Paraguayan economy. The foreign direct investment in Paraguay is growing. Last year, it actually surpassed $1 billion. So there is significant growth in terms of foreign direct investment. Paraguay also has a very favorable story to tell the world about their fiscal responsibility. So in 2003, we had a tax reform which lowered income tax from 30% to 10%. And since then, since 2003, the only year we surpassed 5% inflation was 2022, coming out of COVID. Every single other year, we have had inflation that is significantly lower than the region, and it's actually an inflation comparable to even European countries, right? And at the same time, we're growing at a rate of 5.5%. So just, Paraguay in some numbers, we have about 40% of GDP debt to GDP. Gross domestic product, 44 billion in 2024, almost 50 billion in 2025. It's a country that is still growing its population, and this is something that demographically is very favorable for residential real estate, especially. There is a growing population, not only because of immigration into Paraguay. So this year there were, 2025, around 50,000 people moved into Paraguay, looking for job opportunities, for investment opportunities, especially from Brazil and Argentina, but also a lot of immigration from Germany, from Netherlands, Spain, and other countries in Europe. But at the same time, there is a very important migration going from suburban areas or from rural areas to urban areas. So Paraguay is still the country with the lowest urbanization rate in all Latin America, which means that there will be an increasing population in the cities based on people leaving rural areas. And as you can see in this trend, the urban population is growing faster than the rural population, which means there are more opportunities for people looking for jobs, looking for, education in the cities. Now, Paraguay, you probably know, is a very, export-based economy, mostly agricultural products and electrical energy. It's a country that grows significantly when its agricultural products perform well. When there are severe droughts, it usually, affects the GDP importantly, but the economy is becoming more and more resilient throughout the last years. Now, I'll skip a little bit about the macro because you already know Paraguay, recently became investment grade in 2024, and in 2025, the second rating company already confirmed its investment grade, which was S&P. So now Moody's and S&P have confirmed Paraguay as an investment grade risk profile. The only one pending is Fitch, which will probably confirm this year. Asunción is also becoming increasingly popular with digital nomads. So 2024, it was actually the city that grew the most, or 2025, the city that grew the most in terms of digital nomads in the entire world. And there are many reasons behind this. There is no tax on foreign income in Paraguay. There is no tax on crypto. There is no tax on several things, but at the same time, it has a very inexpensive cost of living. It's relatively safe compared to most cities in the world, and at the same time, very high quality of life in Paraguay. So there are many reasons, and this is a growing trend where digital nomads find Paraguay as a very attractive place to base themselves. Tourism also grew exponentially in Paraguay, 84% increase last year in tourism, mainly due to large events. Paraguay now hosts one of the World Rally Car competitions. It has, it will soon have the inaugural games of the FIFA World Cup. It has, the Junior Olympics very likely coming to Asunción. We have the Pan American Games coming to Asunción. So there are a lot of events. And at the same time, we have business events. So the IDB's General Assembly will be held here in March. And then there are many other of these kinds of events happening in Paraguay. As I said, permanent residents are also increasing. The credit rating is very favorable. The tax framework is very favorable. Only 10% income tax, 10% VAT, and only 5% VAT for properties. Now, once we start going into more demographics, we can talk about the huge opportunity. Paraguay has a 2.5 births per couple, which means it still has a positive increase in population. And that means that it translates into, residential or home deficit, because you need to create more homes for this growing population. Just taking into consideration millennials, which are around 2 million people in Paraguay, 2,080,000 to be more precise, there is a need for about 100,000 homes per year, of which about 50,000 are being built right now. So there is a growing deficit. Now, what does Zuba do, and how do we deliver value with all of this context that I just spoke about? So what Zuba does is we identify opportunities of an arbitrage in price between where the land values are consolidated in price and where the land values are still significantly suppressed because of lack of infrastructure, or because those areas still have not receive the level of investment and services that the lighter green areas that you see on this map have received. So the lighter green areas on this map represent the areas, the more premium areas, the zones that have, the main shopping centers in the country, the most valuable properties in the country. What we do is we identify where there are opportunities right between the light green and, let's say, the marine blue, where there are still more repressed prices or lower land prices, but we do sufficient land bank. We buy enough property where we can actually create value for investors. Because we buy sufficient land, because we have sufficient economies of scale, because we're the largest real estate developer in the country, we can buy enough land where we create the ecosystem that will translate the land prices in order to increase, to be comparable to the light green ones, which significantly appreciates the value of the properties bought by investors. So as you can see, these are the locations of our Zubas, and you can see the light green is where the properties are most expensive in Asunción. This is a map of Asunción. Now, if we take the residential, which is the tier that we compete in, right? We call it premium, then residential plus, $170,000 plus, $86,000 to $70,000 apartments. Then we take $34,000 to $86,000 apartments, which is where Zuba mostly competes in. And then you take the lower tiers of, basically economic or subsidized housing, right? If you make that comparable, you will see that in this tier of residential, which is where Zuba competes, we have pretty much 8 of the 10 most successful projects in terms of market absorption. So Zuba dominates this market, basically, but we do it with a strategy where we are providing in the same areas as the blue, we are providing orange. So we're providing residential in the same areas as residential plus, but we are giving sufficient mixed use and infrastructure to even push the dark blue to a little bit towards the light green, right? Now, Zuba's strategy is what I was saying, is we take a specific area, we develop the area, we call this Zubanization. So Zubanization is not only creating residential infrastructure, but also adding commercial properties, also adding office space, adding, services, restaurants, and creating all that with a layer of software which connects our customers to the value proposition that we give through a loyalty program, where they have benefits by consuming within the platform, and at the same time discounts in those stores so that they can increase the value of living in a Zuba or investing in a Zuba apartment. Here you can see how we create these clusters, and within these clusters we first create critical mass. Once we achieve critical mass, we start adding these services. We're doing the same strategy for Encarnación, Ciudad del Este, which are 2 of the other largest cities in Paraguay. One focused mostly on tourism, Encarnación, where the rally is run, the World Rally Championship, but also it's the most touristic summer city in the country because it has very nice beaches. And in Ciudad del Este, which is a city linked very strongly to commerce with Brazil because of its, neighboring situation with Brazil. You can see here we're creating a cluster in this area, which was an area that was severely underdeveloped, but it has an incredibly nice beach where we are developing our first 3 buildings right next to, the most premium area. But now we are developing all of the area called IVEJM, where we are developing, small apart hotels, restaurants, and creating this value, and of course residentials, where we are creating this value proposition of developing an entire area, which will significantly appreciate the value that investors will receive. Whereas if they went to this Playa San Jose, that's the most touristic beach, they would probably be buying land at least 2 or 3 times the price that we're buying beachfront property. We're doing the same thing with Ciudad del Este. We purchased 2.5 hectares of land in the heart of Ciudad del Este, where we're developing a project that is also bringing massive value for investors. The way that we approach this, you can see here, this is the commercial axis in Asunción, the most expensive square meter in the entire country. Then there are the 2 residential axes. So Molas Lopez and Santísima Trinidad are 2 of the main axes for residential. And you can see how these buildings are coming in the direction, from, let's say, from actually south to north, but it looks like north to south in this image, right? They are coming from the top to the bottom, where all of these buildings, huge, massive skyscrapers, are being built in both of these avenues, which have the highest coefficient of construction in the entire country. But what is happening is that we anticipate this move and we buy sufficient land right after that mostly developed area, where that development will arrive. And we built enough property, enough mixed-use projects, services, restaurants, and everything to add value and create that value for investors. Also, another infrastructure project that we anticipated is that we successfully bought most of these properties right on the train tracks that Paraguay operated for almost 200 years, but stopped operating the train. And we knew that at a certain point, very close, right, Paraguay would again have mass public transportation system built on top of those train tracks, because of all that area was freed up. So right now, I don't know if you've heard or are aware that Etihad Rail will operate the train in Paraguay, and it will be a public transport electric train, which will be a very important public transportation service, which will be able to enable younger people to live in the city without having to buy a car and having to, buy a parking space within their building. So this will create massive upside for all the projects that are on the train track and can utilize that public transportation as another form of service. And we anticipated that trend because we knew that that would happen in the midterm, and now it'll happen probably in the shorter term. So you can see here the train tracks, how close our properties are to the train track. And as I said, there's also a layer of software to the community itself, which is a layer that enables our residents and our investors to be able to receive benefits from companies that are within the community of Zuba. Now, this is one of our newest projects. This is the Ciudad del Este Zubanization. It's called Zuba Plaza Ciudad del Este, and it is part of an ecosystem that we are building in the most, thriving city in Paraguay, right next to Foz de Iguazu and Puerto Iguazu, Argentina and Brazil, which are 2 of the most touristic cities in Brazil and Argentina, and at the same time, one of the most commercial centers in the region. Now, this project has many benefits. One of them is that the project is creating an ecosystem in Ciudad del Este where we bring in the same logic of services, of restaurants, of residents, and we are doing it in the heart of Ciudad del Este, which is a huge opportunity given that thousands of Brazilian students study in Paraguay because of the arbitrage in prices and cost of education. So they come to Paraguay to study, and then they move back to Brazil. There's a huge opportunity for student housing, for young population, and it's also a very thriving commercial city. We are also developing Zuba Centro, which is in the downtown area. It's an area that was neglected for many years, and right now there's massive public infrastructure projects going on. You can see one of them is here. These are the new office buildings of the entire government. So almost 9,000 public servants will enter these buildings and use these buildings as their office space. And we are building the first well-tailored residential solution in this area, because also all of this land used to be a port, so there was no, it was impossible to build build up. It had no coefficient of construction. But now with the new government project of the modern offices, they changed all of this zonification. Also in the front, you can see these warehouses that are on the river. Those warehouses were just leased to a private group that is creating a shopping experience similar to the shopping experience in Puerto Madero in Buenos Aires. So they're creating a Asunción port shopping experience with office space, with and a lot of services that will complement all of this area. So here you can see some images of the building itself. The building itself does have a mini market and gives services not only to the residents but also to the entire city. Zuba Trinidad, which is one of our most successful projects. This project is based in the train tracks of the modern train that they are developing, and it is in the Zubanization area of Zuba Molas Trinidad. The same concepts you can see are consistent, where we deliver a very well-tailored offering of amenities, but at the same time they are cost-efficient amenities, because that is one of our specialties in Zuba. We not only build, but we operate the properties, and we rent the apartments, and we give investors the rent. Zuba Molas Plaza, which is the flagship project in the Molas Trinidad area. It's very close to the bridge that crosses to Argentina. It's also a mixed-use project with a wellness focus, and it's in the Zuba Molas Trinidad Zubanization. Here you can see a little map of our expansion within all of these areas. We are starting to increase also in the downtown, and it kind of shows our strategy behind building around the most expensive areas so that we can deliver very cost competitive, but at the same time high quality and well-priced properties. So out of those 2,080,000 people that I explained are the millennials in Paraguay, their average income is around $800 to $850 a month. So you have to understand that economics, you usually can invest from 30 to 40% of your disposal or of your income can be geared towards rent, right? Because that is what economists value for mortgages and for renting property. And so in order to achieve that, we have to have properties that are around $250 to $300 a month, right? And $500 a month if it's a 2-bedroom apartment. So what we do with that is we do a reverse engineering of $250 to $450 and see what we can build with this available income, right? We don't do what other developers, traditional developers usually do, which is they are architects, they design very beautiful properties, they buy very expensive land, and then they say, okay, who can I sell this $150,000 or $250,000 apartment to? We do a reverse engineering and we say, we know exactly what this property has to cost and what the monthly payment has to be. and what the rent has to be in order for an investor to make money buying this property and renting it out for $250 or $350 or $450, depending on the type of property. So that reverse engineering has consolidated our position as a market leader because we're able to deliver massive value. And now that we can deliver massive value, we do it at a scale that no one else can compete with, which is why in this segment, we basically have 8 of the 10 most sold projects within the last year, right? And we are at a run rate of around 2.5 to 3,000 apartments per year. We've delivered more apartments in the last 7 years than any other real estate company in the entire country's history. So just to give you a little sense of how Zuba has grown, is growing, and will grow, which is why we strengthened our business model by, becoming a public and transparent company. And what I mean by a public and transparent company is that, our balance sheet, our financials are fully disclosed in the Central Bank of Paraguay. We prove that we don't launder money, we don't do any weird stuff, we don't mess with our financials. Like, our company is fully transparent. We have the capability to raise public funds in terms of both equity and debt. We only raise small amounts of debt right now, but we could eventually raise equity and debt as well in the public markets. But mostly we did this because we want to prove that our business model both works, but at the same time it's sustainable in the long term, which gives, of course, investors, buyers, a lot of confidence in our proposal. So these are just some images about the product offering. And, we always end our presentations with our slogan. Our slogan is move into the dream, or move to the dream. And the dream consists of, of fulfilling this promise that we have that I stated in the beginning. Our promise is it's mutual prosperity. It's a win-win. It's generating progress in people's lives through development. So what we are doing is we are creating massive value for all stakeholders. And when I mean all stakeholders, I mean from our investors, our residents, our collaborators, even the indirect suppliers, people who build with us. We have a program where and actually that should have been one of the slides in this presentation, but the people who work in our construction, so we have around almost 3,000 people working simultaneously in different constructions throughout the country. These people we have a program where if they don't have housing, right, we give them basic housing, we train them, and then these trained people can eventually get a job offering if they pass these tests that we do. So we're trying to create, I would say a little bit of a fairer world, a little bit of a better world, and we're doing it in this little beautiful place called Paraguay. So thank you very much for your attention, for your interest, and if there are any questions, I think that Angelique is very capable of responding. I can also respond some of them. And I want to thank Jose and Mario and everyone for making this opportunity possible.